Shalom, and welcome back everyone to another episode of What Calendar Was Used in the Old and New Testament? Was it lunar, solar, or Roman calendar? This is part 5, and today the message is being presented by me, Yakanina, and it's sponsored by the House of Shiloh Ministries. This is depicting what topics we've covered in our previous parts 1 through 4. You can see part 1 and part 2 and part 3, and these are the topics that are covered. In part 4, we're starting part 5 today with Let My People Go. That's at the beginning of part 5. The purpose of this lesson is multifold. The first one is to determine which calendar we should use to calculate our holy days. Second, to biblically demonstrate the use of a sacred or a solar calendar throughout the Bible. 3, to provide a step-by-step instructions on how to use the solar calendar for determining Yahuwah's appointed days or the holy days. And number 4, to highlight the reasons why the Roman calendar was adjusted to closely synchronize with the solar calendar. Again, as I have said before in my previous episodes, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised to learn this one. Before the Exodus, Yahuwah said to Moshe, "Go and tell Pharaoh to let my people go." So you're probably asking yourself, what does that have to do with the calendar? What does the Exodus, what does Yahuwah instructing Moshe to go speak with Pharaoh, instructing him to release Yasharel, what does that have to do with the calendar? Let's begin. Exodus 5. And afterward, Moshe and Aharon went in and told Pharaoh, "Thus says Yahuwah Elohai of Yasharel, let my people go, that they may hold a feast unto me in the wilderness. And you shall say unto him, Yahuwah Elohai of the Ephraim has sent me unto you, saying, Let my people go, that they may serve me in the wilderness. And behold, hitherto you would not hear." Exodus 8, verse 8. Then Pharaoh called for Moshe and Aharon and said, "Entreat El Yahuwah, that he may take away the frogs from me and from my people, and I will let the people go, that they may do sacrifice unto Yahuwah." At the surface, when you read this, it's sort of difficult to see what this has to do with the calendar. But if you remember the previous episodes, I believe it was part 1, we learned in Genesis chapter 1, when Yahuwah says, "Let the sun, moon, and stars be for days, for months, for years, and for seasons." Do you remember that? Do you remember the word seasons means feast? Or in Hebrew, it's the word is moed, or some pronounce it moadah, moed. So even in Genesis chapter 1, Yahuwah was saying that he created, one of the reasons he created the sun, moon, and stars is to help us to keep track of when the holy days would occur every year. So for Yasharel to be free to hold a feast unto Yahuwah, they had to be let go. They could not do this while they were in bondage in Egypt. That makes sense, right? So why did Yahuwah want his people released? He wanted his people to hold a feast, that means observe the holy days to him. Because after all, the holy days are part of a covenant. Their feast celebration had to be according to the date, day, and time that's chosen by Yahuwah. That's another reason they needed to leave Egypt. Egypt is because Egypt was using a different calendar than the one that was given to Yasharel. Lastly, this means that Yahuwah would need to reset and reteach his calendar again to Yasharel as they leave the house of bondage, which is Egypt. So this has everything to do with the calendar. I'm not saying that this is the only reason that Yahuwah wanted Yasharel to be free, but this is a main reason. So let's talk about now how Yahuwah reset the calendar after the Exodus. Okay, Exodus chapter 12. And Yahuwah spoke unto El Moshe and El Aharon in the land of Mitzrayim, saying, this month, think about that. What month is he talking about? This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. In other words, he's saying, start your calendar here, right? This shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you. Speak ye unto all the assembly of Yasharel, saying, in the 10th day of this month, they shall take to them every man a lamb, according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for a house. And if the household be too little for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next unto his house take it according to the number of the souls, every man according to his eating, so make your account for the lamb. Exodus 13, 3 through 4. And Moshe said unto the people, remember this day in which ye came out from Mizraim, out of the house of bondage. For by strength of hand Yahuwah brought you out from this place. There shall no chamats, which is leavened bread. It means leavened bread. There shall no chamats be eaten. This day came ye out in the month Aviv or Abib. So when we look in verses 1 through 4 in chapter 12, when he says this month, he's speaking of the month Aviv or Abib. And with a simple Google search, you put that word in Google and ask Google to tell you what that name is in English. It will tell you it's the month of March. It's the month of March. How about that? Did you know that was in the Bible? It's saying March is the beginning of the months of the year for you, Yasharel. This is how you will set up your calendar. Deuteronomy 16:1. Guard the month of Aviv and keep the Pikah or Passover unto Yahuwah Eloheka, for in the month of Aviv Yahuwah Eloheka brought you forth out of Mitzrayim by night. So you can see this is repeated a few times in the scriptures, which means it's a witness that the month of March is the first month of the year for Yasharel. Since that time, going past that time, I should say, after the Exodus, and long after the Exodus, up until about after Daniel's time, the times have changed again. The times have changed again, and Daniel prophesied that the times would change. So, did you know that the calendar which was used in the days of Noah, in the time of Moses, during the life of Daniel, and the reign of Hezekiah, is not the calendar that is used today in most parts of the world? Did you ever wonder what could have happened to bring about this change? The answer is what Daniel prophesied some 1,000 years ago, and that is times and laws would be changed. And today, you and I, we are all witnesses to his prophecy. because it has happened. Times and laws have changed. If you can remember, the word laws was defined as a decree made by a king that would change laws, that would change times, that would change um, appointed times. And appointed times have to do with feast days. So Daniel prophesied this, and the time did change. Okay. The Roman calendar. The Roman calendar has had an ancient foothold in most of the world for such a long time. It has caused Yasharel to forget about the calendar given to them by Yahuwah since antiquity. And as of today, the Roman calendar is the standard for much of Europe, America, and some other nations. And here's something to think about. Did you ever wonder what caused Yasharel to accept the Roman calendar in exchange for Yahuwah's calendar? Could it have been a cataclysmic event? Do you know the differences between these two calendars? Because understanding the difference will help solidify your decision on which one you're going to use going forward. Therefore, in the upcoming slides, we will answer these questions as we discuss the Roman calendar reformations. In the early years of the Roman calendar, according to an author named Livy, it was Numa Pompilius, the second king of Rome, who divided the year into 12 lunar months. We're speaking of Rome's calendar, because Rome's previous calendar had only 10 months, and they began in March. But the moon's lunation, a period of approximately 29.5 days, is not the same length of time as the Earth's annual orbit around the sun. And that's a period of approximately 365.25 days. So 12 lunar months are shorter by about 11 days than the solar year. And without intercalating, that means inserting, these missing days, the calendar cannot maintain synchronicity with the seasons. Such was the disparity between between the calendar of the Roman Republic and the solar year. So the way the Roman Republic's calendar was operating was different than that of the solar year, and they were not in sync. So that is what was happening when a nearly total eclipse of the sun was observed in Rome on March the 14th, 190 BC. But on their calendar, it was recorded as having taken place on July the 11th. Do you see the difference in a few months there? Because the months were drifting because they were using a lunar calculation for their calendar. And it was throwing their months out of season. Over a period of time, it throws the months out of season. This is why we should not use the lunar calculations for our calendar. This is the reason why. Okay. So there were calendar reformations that were done by three main people: Julius Caesar, Constantine, and Pope Gregory. Right now, we're going to talk about Julius Caesar. So, who was he? Caesar was born on July 12th or the 13th in 100 BC to a noble family. During his youth, the Roman Republic was in chaos. Seizing the opportunity, Caesar advanced in the political system to become a Roman dictator. As he rose through the ranks of the Roman Republic, Julius ultimately declared himself dictator for life, which shook the foundations of Rome itself. I think we sort of hear that from our current president, huh? Scratch that. I didn't say that. Okay. The calendar reformation. Now, in the mid first century BC, Julius Caesar Roman emperor, invited Sosigenes, I think that's the way to pronounce his name, I'm not sure, an Alexandrian or Egyptian astronomer, to advise him about the reform of the calendar. And Sosigenes decided that the only practical step was to abandon the lunar calendar altogether because it throws the calendar out of sync. Months must be arranged on a seasonal basis in a tropical solar year. Julius Caesar was trying to stop the calendar's months and seasons from drifting apart. This is why he called or invited this Egyptian astronomer, because he wanted to know how to fix it. And he told him, dump the use of the lunar calendar and move to a solar calendar. Let me pull up a um, explanation of what a tropical year is, which is a solar year. Here's a Wikipedia definition for you. A tropical year is the time that the sun takes to return to the same position in the sky of a celestial body of the solar system, such as the Earth, completing a full cycle of seasons. For example, the time from vernal equinox to vernal equinox, or from summer solstice to summer solstice, or from, I'm adding this one, from spring equinox to spring equinox. Because for Yasharel, we begin with the spring equinox, which begins in March. Okay, so the Julian calendar, proposed by Julius Caesar, it was a reform of the traditional Roman calendar, because remember, the previous Roman calendar was a lunar-based calendar, where Julius Caesar is bringing in a solar-based calendar. So Caesar used his positions as Rome's chief pontiff to enact a calendar reform around 46 BC, because the Roman calendar attempted to follow the lunar cycle but frequently fell out of phase with the seasons and had to be corrected. In order to avoid interfering with Rome's religious ceremonies, the reform added all its days toward the end of months. Remember, in the book of Enoch, in chapter 72, it tells us very clearly that the days that we add are called intercalary days. There are only 4 intercalary days, one for every season. We have 4 seasons: spring, summer, fall, and winter. There are only 4 days, and if you add those days, then our calendars do not get out of sync with Yahuwah's calendar, with the celestial calendar. Okay. Around 46 BC, New Year's Day is celebrated on January 1st for the first time in history as the Julian solar calendar takes effect. Notice that it's no longer being done via the lunar cycles, and it's no longer recognizing March as the first month, but now it's recognizing January as the first month. The Roman calendar used to start with March, even though it was lunar based. But Julius Caesar brought about some reformations, and now the calendar is solar based, and it begins in January. Okay. So Constantine comes upon the scene, and he realizes there are some problems with the calendar, with Julius Caesar's calendar. So he makes some major changes also. So let's learn about Constantine. Who was he? Also known as Constantine the Great. He was a Roman emperor from AD 306 to 337, and the first Roman emperor to convert to Christianity. He played a pivotal role and elevating the status of Christianity in Rome, decriminalizing Christian practice, and ceasing Christian persecution in a period referred to as the Constantinian shift. Constantine is also the originator of the Real geopolitical ideology known as Constantinism, which epitomizes the unity of church and state as opposed to separation of church and state. So this is where things can get a bit um, muddied, so to speak, where it says he, where is it? Let's see. He decriminalized Christian practice and ceasing Christian persecution. Here's what I want you to understand. This word Christian, it should have been Hebrews that were being persecuted. It's called the way. It's called the way. Hebrews followed the way. That's what it's called. So they were prosecuting Hebrews who followed the way, which is the same lifestyle that our Messiah, Yahushua, followed. Yahushua also followed the way. Yahushua was not a Christian. He was not a Catholic. He was not a Baptist, an Episcopalian, a Lutheran. He was a follower of the way. He was a Hebrew Israelite. They were persecuting Hebrew Israelites and wanting them to conform to Christianity. Anyway, that's just a side note. All right, what did Constantine accomplish? So this is what he did. Constantine made Christianity the main religion of Rome. Now bear in mind, we're not speaking of the religion that Yahushua taught, because Yahushua did not teach a religion. Yahushua taught a lifestyle, not a once a week performance. He taught a daily lifestyle. But Constantine made Christianity something you do once a week, the main religion of Rome, going to church on Sunday, and they did not live according to the way. Anyway, let me keep focused. The main religion of Rome, and created Constantinople, which became the most powerful city in the world. During his reign, he ruled over the Roman Empire, which included modern-day Britain, France, and Spain. And as a side note, as a reminder, Britain ruled over America until 1776, when the 13 colonies adopted the Declaration of Independence. And that severed their political ties to Great Britain. What's my point? My point is this. That means if Rome's ruled over the modern day Britain, France, and Spain, and Great Britain ruled over America, that means that Constantine's calendar was also in effect in America. America's calendar is greatly influenced by Britain, who was also ruled by Constantine. So the calendar that we're looking at today, the regular Roman calendar, is an influence from Constantine, not Yahuwah. What did Constantine accomplish religiously? Constantine was determined that Christianity, let me read this more slowly. Constantine was determined that Christianity would not mimic nor be compared to the customs and faith of the Hebrews. So Christianity is not what Yahushua taught. Christianity is not what the disciples taught. Christianity is not what the prophets in the Old Testament taught. They taught about the way of life. That is what they taught. Anyway, Constantine formulated a creed that required all Christian believers to renounce the whole Hebrew faith. So if a Hebrew person wanted to stop being persecuted for their faith, they would have to become a Christian and renounce the Hebrew faith. And the creed says the following thing, which I think you will be stunned. Let me read it for you. This is Constantine's creed. It says, I renounce all customs, rites, legalisms, unleavened breads, and sacrifices of lambs of the Hebrews, and all the other feasts of the Hebrews, sacrifices, prayers, aspirations, purifications, sanctifications, and propitiations, and fasts, and new moons, and Sabbaths, and superstitions, and hymns, and chants, and observances, and synagogues. Absolutely everything, not Jewish, because that word is there in error. Everything Hebraic or everything that belongs to the Hebrews is what that should say. Every law, right, and custom, and if afterwards I shall wish to deny and return to the Hebrew superstition, or shall be found eating with Hebrews, or should I say Yasharel, or feasting with them, or secretly conversing and condemning the Christian religion, instead of openly confuting them and condemning their vain faith. How about that? Then let the trembling of Cain and the leprosy of Gehazi cleave to me, as well as the legal punishments to which I acknowledge myself liable. And may I be an anathema in the world to come, and may my soul be set down with Satan and the devils. And this is the reference link for this creed that I just read to you if you want to look it up. Isn't this something? Okay, let's go on. Did you know early believers kept Saturday as the Sabbath until March the 7th, 321, when Constantine passed a law requiring believers to worship on Sunday, the day the pagans worshiped the sun god. Believers still kept Saturday as the Sabbath until another law was passed 11 years later. This law, signed into decree by Constantine, forbid believers to worship on the Sabbath, and it was punishable by death by the Catholic Church. Many believers were burned to death by the Catholic Church for keeping the Sabbath. So if you want to know how did Yasharel become worshipers on Sunday today, it was upon persecution, the threat of death by burning or hanging or what other means they chose. Eventually, over time, Yahshua began to shift from Saturday to Sunday to save a life. That's the reason why many of Yahshua worship on Sunday today. We're on the wrong calendar. It should be Saturday on the seventh day. Okay. So in 301 AD, Emperor Constantine the Great, he made three major changes to the Julian calendar because the calendar was on a lunar-based system and without intercalating, that means inserting additional days. Their calendar could not maintain synchronicity with the seasons over time. The Julian calendar was created by Julius Caesar in 46 BC, but it also drifted from the tropical year. Remember that tropical year just means a solar year. So the moon's lunation a period of approximately 29.5 days, is not the same length of time as the Earth's annual orbit around the Sun, a period of approximately 365.25 days. So 12 lunar months are shorter by about 11 days than the solar year. So imagine what that would look like if you used the lunar calendar over a period of 5, 10, 20 years, how your months will begin to shift out of season because the lunar calendar is shorter than the solar calendar. Hopefully, this is painting a clearer picture as to why you should not use a lunar calendar, but a solar calendar. Okay. So the main calendar changes done by Constantine. He instituted a 7-day week. He standardized the 7-day week with Sunday as the first day. He fixed the dates for the Christian holidays, and they were established for Christian holidays. So I said that already, sorry. Easter was added to the calendar with a flexible date to always land on Sunday. So some of the earlier Roman calendars had an 8-day week. So this is why Constantine says, no, it's going to be 7 days a week, and that's going to be the standard for the calendar. And they created fixed, or should I say, appointed dates. And these principles they mimic from the scriptures for their holidays, which they didn't have before. And then Easter was added as a comparable day to Passover. Why did they do that? Think about it. Remember, they were telling the Hebrews that you cannot practice your faith. But if you shift over to Christianity, we have a holiday over here called Easter that is comparable to your Passover. So switching shouldn't be so difficult for you. Yeah, we know that you worship on Saturday, but you can worship on Sunday. You still get to worship. We know that you have Passover, but you can do Easter, and it's around the same time. So it shouldn't be much for you to shift. And here we are today. That's how it happened. Then comes along Pope Gregory. He too does some calendar reformations, and his changes are the ones that we still see today. So let's learn about Pope Gregory. Okay, he was born January 1502 until April the 10th, 1585. He was born Ugo von Compagni. I think that's the way they enunciate it. And he was head of the Catholic Church and ruler of the Papal States from 13 May 1572 to his death in April 1585. He is best known for commissioning and being the namesake for the Gregorian calendar, which remains the internationally accepted civil calendar to this day. Why did Pope Gregory need a different calendar? What was wrong with the calendar? Let's read it. In 1582, Pope Gregory introduced his Gregorian calendar. Although Europe already had adhered to the Julian calendar that was first implemented by Julius Caesar in 46 BC, the Roman Julian emperor's system, it miscalculated the length of the solar days. Therefore, it fell out of sync with the seasons. It became evident that the miscalculations of the Julian calendar, it caused Easter to fall further away from the spring equinox, which begins in March, by the way, with each passing year. And it was important for them to keep this Easter holiday very close to the Passover holy day so that the perpetuation of this lie could continue. Okay. Julian's calendar was the date. I'm sorry, Julian's calendar caused the date of Easter to shift so far away from the vernal equinox that Pope Gregory ordered the calendar's adjustment, resulting in the Gregorian calendar. The Pope's motivation for the adjustment was to bring the date for the celebration of Easter to the time of the year in which the first Council of Nicaea, that was during the time of Constantine, had agreed upon in 325 AD, which was traditionally observed on March 21st. The celebration of Easter was tied to the spring equinox, and the Roman Catholic Church considered the drifting date unacceptable. Ask yourself this question. Rome has other holidays aside from Easter. Why was this one the most important to them that they were willing to reform the whole calendar? That's something to think about, right? Okay. The Gregorian calendar was a reform of the Julian calendar. Another reason for its reformation was an attempt by businessmen to track and predict a connection between the sun and regions of the earth to facilitate global commerce. It was instituted by papal bulls Intergravissimus, dated 24 February 1582 by Pope Gregory, after whom the calendar is named. So what is a papal bull? Because it says that this Reformation was instituted by a papal bull. So what is a papal bull? A papal bull is a type of public decree. Remember, Daniel says he would think to change times and laws. And remember, the definition for laws was a decree of the king. And here is the king, if you will, Pope Gregory, giving a decree to change the laws. They changed they changed the time of worship, the days of worship. They changed the calendar on days in which they were supposed to be worshipped also. Anyway, a papal bull is a type of public decree, letters patent, or charter issued by a pope of the Catholic Church. It is named after the leaden seal bulla that was traditionally appended to the end in order to authenticate it. So that's saying that um, there is a seal that's stamped at the end of this document to authenticate it, just as though you have your um, your business documentations and you put the company's seal at the bottom of it. Similar to that. Okay. Oh, that's a typo. Sorry. The papal bull was issued by Pope Gregory on 24 February 1582. The document, written in Latin, reformed the Julian calendar. The reform came to be regarded as a new calendar in its own right and came to be called the Gregorian calendar, which is used in most countries today, including the United States of America. The intention expressed by the text of this bull was to restore the calendar so that seasonal events critical for the calculation of Easter dates would be back in their proper places and would be prevented from being moved away again. They wanted to ensure that Easter stays very close to the Hebrews' Passover. They would not allow those to drift away. Excuse me, I had to get a water drink. The bull identifies three necessary things for the correct determination of Easter dates. 1. The correct placement of the northern vernal equinox. 2. Correct identification of the 14th day of the month, effectively full moon, that happens on or next after the vernal equinox, and select the first Sunday that follows that full moon. This is the way they calculate their time for their holiday. And I keep repeating it, that Yasharel, when Yasharel calculates its time for Passover, it's done differently. Okay, so the final calendar reformations. So by the time the error accumulated, that means the dates had shifted so much over the centuries, it meant that there were 10 days too many on the calendar. By the authority of that papal bull, the last day of the Julian calendar was Thursday, October the 4th, 1582, right? And then they deducted 10 days. And then the first day of the Gregorian calendar, which was the very next day, it was a Friday. Notice it was October the 15th. So it went from October the 4th to October the 15th. Let me show it to you here. The Julian calendar, 1582. The Gregorian calendar, 1582. October, Monday is the 1st, Tuesday the 2nd, Wednesday the 3rd, Thursday is the 4th, Friday is the 15th. You see that? From the 4th to the 15th is 10 days. They cut off 10 days so that they can keep this calendar in sync because they found that it was shifting out of season. The way they were calculating the time was causing a shift. Okay, let's go back. So let's summarize what we just learned. We learned it was Julius Caesar who brought a great reform of Rome's calendar by moving it away from the annual moon and based it upon a solar year. No more lunar-based calendars. Julius Caesar said, no, the seasons drift too far apart. We're going to make this calendar solar-based now. Then comes along Constantine. He brings about another reformation by locking the calendar into a 7-day a week instead of its previous times of 8 days a week. And then Constantine enforced the Roman Christian calendar throughout all of its ruled territories. That means the calendar that Yasharel was using, they were not allowed to use that anymore because they were being forced to move from the Hebrew way of life to Christianity. Remember, I asked the question, what caused Yasharel to forego their own calendar given to them by Yahuwah to accept the Roman calendar? This is the answer to that question. Constantine enforced Easter and criminalized the celebration of any of the Hebrew holy days. If they were caught doing any of these Hebrew holy days, they were put to death. So he stomped it out of our people. Then comes along Pope Gregory. He restored the calendar so that the seasonal events, which were critical for the calculation of Easter dates, will be back in their proper places and will be prevented from being moved away again. So in 1582, Pope Gregory removed 10 days from the calendar to bring it back into sync with the seasons. The Roman calendar that we have today is a reflection of the above major calendar reformations. This is the end of our part 5. I hope you found this very informational. If you like it, please give us a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, please do so you can be notified when we upload another episode. Thank you for fellowshipping with us, and shalom.